You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with R.L. Malpica.
Yes.
So,
I'm in the flesh.
R.L., tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you do professionally?
Yeah. Well, I have a podcast as well. Mine's Like Mine's podcast. But ultimately, I'm an independent filmmaker who kind of has his hands in a few different things, but specialize in independent films, short films, documentaries, and pretty much any type of film servicing out there, as well as the podcast.
Now, you work as an independent filmmaker. So, what types do you create your own, or do you get hired to do films?
I'm mostly focused on my own, but I am for hire as well, depending on timing and all that good stuff. But
what types of things do you try and focus on? Because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to film industry. You know, the comedy, action. Are we talking about horror?
No horror, but I'd say my films are more based on substance, kind of like the podcast. If anyone's listened to my Minds Like Mine's podcast, just on messages and deep storylines. It can be funny as well, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, there's always going to be some type of message or some type of overlying theme that goes in this.
Like anything Morgan Freeman says.
There you go.
It has a message to it. So how did you decide to get into filmmaking? Was this like a passion you had as a kid, or?
Well, it's funny, man. I when I was 12, I realized that I loved storytelling at that age, but it didn't translate into film. Granted, I was 12, so I was super young. But it started off with music. I started doing. I was kind of raised by the hip hop culture, so I got into hip hop music. I used to rap. Dropped a couple like independent albums, but that ultimately like formulated myself as a filmmaker. I took the music aspect and really kind of branched it off into filming. So a lot of my roots come from music.
Well, how hard is it to have stories at the age of 12? There's like, you haven't really truly lived really though.
Well, it's funny because when I was 12, I would make music about characters I would create. So I basically created this character that was kind of like a pimp. I didn't have a bunch of girlfriends, but I rap like I did, and I kind of created this image in this world,
like a second persona.
Exactly.
Everyone has that, when they drink too much alcohol, they're known as like that guy. They turn into a different person or something.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, man.
Yeah, everybody's got it, dude. And you get to see that like a lot in the world today. Everyone's got like a second side of them you know nothing about, whether it's like they're showing Jekyll all the time,
right.
They're showing the other side. And it's really weird to see, because it feels like the only time you can truly ever, which is how I kind of started the podcast, the only time I can ever lower that or get the true person out of you, good or bad, is through a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, that's very, very true, man. So that's kind of how it started, man, at 12. And then ultimately, just kind of grew into what it is now, man. And you could see the signs early on. My mom always tells me that she could tell. And looking back just on my music and the way I did it, it really is a true root and a true base foundation of what I do today in film.
It feels like when we're little kids is when we know what most we want to do in the world, but it's blinded by things we see on television, such as like space and, astronaut. Oh, that's what you want to be. That's what, you want to aspire to be. It's like, ask if I got to ask myself what I wanted to do at a young age, right, and find out what I'm doing now, they hit kind of probably similar.
So what about you, man? I mean, I know you're doing the podcast now, but like when did you realize what you wanted to do?
I still don't even know what I want to do, man. That's what I'm saying. Like I work at a hotel during the day, but then I have a podcast that I've been doing, and I find I love doing this mostly because the knowledge I've pulled from it, from everyone's experiences and stories. It's like,
yeah, man, you're on almost 200 episodes, huh?
Yeah, these aren't live, so they're pre-recorded. So usually, I probably have conversations with over 250 different people.
That's awesome.
And you
That's
get to
awesome.
only see the stories and the change. Like I went to school. I did communication arts class where we would leave and do film scenes. I love that whole aspect, but it seems like where school, the education system, all these things that I find fault with, at least it was kind of given up on me when I was a kid. There's so many benefits to it. If you just ask the kid, like, what the fuck do you want to learn?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Like how better would have your life been if you had more creativity classes with, like, obviously you need the basic functions like how to do
Yeah.
math, but don't give me fucking calculus if I can't even pass algebra 1. Like
Yeah, man.
that shit happened to me so much. They're like, you need to take algebra 1 again. I'm like, I know. So what's else do I have to take? And like, well, we got to throw this trigonometry your way. I'm like, what?
It's all conditioning, man. It's they want robots, not to get too deep with it. You know what I'm saying? They want everyone to be the same, and they don't want to
It's not that we want robots. It's we want to manufacture this lifestyle, this common norm personality or lifestyle known as the gym that works the 9 to 5.
Yep.
This is a heavy debate I've found out through my podcasting with so many people, is that we're all thinking it, but no one is pointing it out. You walk around, everyone talks the same, everyone acts the same, everyone does these subtle things that are exactly the same.
Mhm.
Everyone's on fucking autopilot.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's almost like, I talked about this a little bit on one of my episodes of my podcast, is that um, they've sold the quote unquote American dream, which was created maybe 70 years ago, but it doesn't apply till today. But yet,
It's an old idea.
yeah, but people still go through it. They still think, okay, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get my degree there. I'm going to get into a job. I'm going to work for, I don't know, 50 years till I can retire, and then live off my retirement and then ride off in the sunset. Like, that's the quote unquote American dream.
That shit don't happen.
No.
There's an old woman that was working in a store where she should have been retired. She's 90 years old. She should have been retired, but
That's crazy.
she's still working. And I said, what happened? She said, I had to pick up another job. My retirement wasn't enough. I had to pick up another job. I'm like, you're working another job because you worked your ass off for a company, and now where you thought you'd have retirement, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a faulted system, and the quicker young people like yourself, man, like, and it sounds like you got a great head on your shoulders, but all you guys out there, like, as soon as you figure, like, the quicker you figure that out, the quicker you'll be on a different path.
Oh, I got a good head on my shoulders. I'm about to hit you with that left turn. Hang on a second. No, it's crazy because through talking with people and noticing things, there's a lot I benefited from being introvert for so long, where I started
Right.
thinking and watching a little bit more. Everyone's like, you want to be a leader, not a follower. You don't want to be either. You want to do what you feel like you have to do, and you don't want to lead people astray as well. How many times do kids my age, like, I don't drink. I'm 21 years old. I've never bought a legal drink of alcohol. I had something in my life that deterred me from it. And I see so many kids nowadays that are, the only way they hang out anymore is by drinking, is by doing these things. And then finding out people are starting podcasting because it's a form of connecting again. I'm like, why you need that connection, or you need that thing to make you do something, is because you're experiencing so much pain on a daily fucking basis. When you go, I mean, you don't even understand what I call micro fractures. The reason I curse is because it is a stress relief. It's not that I'm angry or anything. I tell people, like, no, I'm not angry. I just, sometimes something happens. I'm like, shit, it's that little word or that whatever stigmatized thing we have creates a big stress relief in your life. It's like an invisible rock getting picked up off that weight on your shoulders.
Right.
And you're seeing, like, with young ages, social media, it's a big benefit to a lot of people's life, but I say it's good in some usage, but sadly people ride things to the very, very end of it. We take things so, I guess, grasp it so much and use it so much that it turns into a bad thing when its initial intent was good. Back in the day, social media's intent when it first came out was to be able to connect people with other people from other places. Well, now it's not. Now it's another form of bullying. Now it's making these pictures, taking things out of context from people and morphing it up so it makes it sound like they said something they didn't. And it's like, where are we going? Like, where do you expect this world to end up 10 years from now? Because honestly, it doesn't look good.
No, not at all, man. Social media, it's a gift and a curse. You know, I'm older, so I still use Facebook. I know a lot of young people don't use Facebook anymore, but the only reason I use it is to connect with family. That's, you know, I have family in New York, I have family in Florida, I have family in Ohio. So that allows me to connect with them. But it seems like social media has really deterred people from learning how to communicate in the flesh. And also, there's something I actually researched. It's called social media anxiety disorder. And it's a real thing because not only are people addicted to social media, but it's affecting their personality. It's affecting their psyche to the point where, you know, if they post something and they don't get enough likes, that actually mentally fucks with their head. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Nope. Nobody knows how to shake a hand anymore either. If you notice,
oh,
they go and shake a hand. It's like a dead fish. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
oh yeah, it's a concept that's going to the wayside for sure, man. But yeah, social media, it's gotten out of hand. I always wonder, like, if I know it won't change because it's a part of society now. It is what it is.
Well,
But
if I tried to take it away from you, you wouldn't know what life would be like
you
with it.
there?
Yeah. Well, if I took it away from you, you wouldn't know
Right.
like what life would be like without your phone anymore. You'd be like, how do I live? It's like, how did people live
Exactly.
before? They didn't fucking have that little bastard in their pocket.
No, no. I mean, sometimes, and what's the thing? You're driving and you have a question. Oh, I'll just Google it. You know, me and my wife were talking the other day. Like, what do we do before we could Google shit? Like, we just didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, we just didn't know, and we had to do what we had to do and find our resources to figure out what's going on. But it's like everything is instant gratification, right in your hand, and you have to have it right here now.
Well, it's a major benefit to have the internet in our pocket. But like I said before, any type of problem we face now with anything is usually probably created by ourselves. Every problem we ever face is created by something we have done. Technology, Facebook is down. That's a big problem. Okay, well, did you know that we created Facebook, right? And just like people, anything we create is not perfect. Nothing is perfect. We're not perfect. The best part about us is our flaws. But a lot of people, like with social media, if you want to really honestly narrow down everything in society that's wrong, we would be here all fucking day. This would be like a 2-year podcast. But
Yeah.
listen, there's things that are common in social trends. Now that, you know, advertising, you know, them, whether they're listening to you or not, just name one. Like, what types of stuff in your podcast do you try and focus on when it comes to the social kind of aspect of like conformity?
Well, just that word right there, conformity. I mean, kind of the basis behind my podcast and even my film company is to not conform, is to be an individual, be and be comfortable in that space and really get to understand yourself internally and separate yourself from external factors. Like if I were to give you a quick synopsis on the podcast, that's what I would say. I mean, we do, for instance, the our past 3 or 4 episodes, we've done something called the consciousness series, where just talks about different aspects of, you know, trying to reach your best self, your highest self, and how that focus is internal and not external, not allowing traffic outside to fuck up your day, or not allowing, you know, even your spouse or someone, the people that you're around, your work, the people you work with, to truly affect your day. Ultimately, that's what I think really hurts society, because everybody relies so much on external factors, things that truly do not matter, like social media, for instance.
Well, see, the thing is, we live in a culture, in a world now, like this is an adopted nature. It's adopted human characteristic to, you know, be negative and only really care about yourself.
Right.
Back in the day, this wasn't a thing. We thought like groups, we built up groups. We wanted to sustain for the group. We wanted to survive, but also be able to help others and care. Back before, now everyone just wants to grab a piece for themselves. And they feel like that's the only way to ever really truly talk to anybody, is if they can get something out of them.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, how is this person going to benefit me? Oh, well, I'll talk to him and I'll hit him up whenever whenever I need a ride.
Right.
You know, I'll be his friend, but not really. It's false personas that we're a lot of people are showing. Now, it's not the fun way of creating, an imaginary friend or creating maybe a alternate external personality where, you did for your music and stuff. It's more of an idea of we're creating this false image where it's like the SpongeBob episode where he is all rounded out and he's just like, hi, how you doing? That's the fucking answer. I do things in my everyday life where I tell people like, if I don't answer you back over something, when you walk past me and you say, hey, how's your day going? And you keep on walking, I won't respond to you because you're giving me it's default communication. I'd rather not have it at all.
Exactly. And I say that, one of the other things we touch upon is mental health. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And
I mean, I went to school for psychology to deal with that whole issue, mostly because opioid addiction in my area was so big. And then I founded my aspirations for thing was finding that the human mind is so complicated and just wonderful that we barely understand anything about it.
True. And that's something that we do. Like when I say we, I'm not saying me or you, but I'm saying in general, the society of today is that, yeah, we put on this facade and act like we care when we really don't. We go to work and we go through these autopilot statements of, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? I mean, are you really asking, or are you just doing it to kind of give me the base, the base response of your normal colleague or something like that? When people are actually dealing with shit and all it takes, what I'm saying? All it takes is to ask somebody, what's going on, and follow up questions and really care and really be empathetic. I think society has lost empathy.
It's not just our society either. Other countries face it as well. But see, the thing is, they're not experiencing it so heavily there. They're still caring people over there because they're not so adapted to how we've adapted as people in America. We've become a little bit more capsulated with our comfortability factor when it comes to inventions and technology. I work at a hotel, so we get Romanian and Bulgarian students, Pakistan, all these people coming over, and they're kids my age. And they always told me, like, I really like you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And they're like, you know why? And I'm like, I really don't. And they say, because you're Robbie. And I'm like, what does that mean? And like, that's what everyone has given me an answer for my whole entire life. It means I'm not good or bad. It just means I'm Robbie. I'm my own unique individual. And I tell them, like, why am I different from all the other people that live here? And they go, because you actually give a shit when you ask about how our day is. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to waste time asking you how your day is if I don't care. And I'm like, I took the time to get to know people. I took the time to pronounce their name correctly, what they're actually supposed to be called, rather than the pet nickname our work gave them because it was just easier to say for us. I'm like, no, go out of your way to learn that shit. Learn a little bit about their lives. Some of them have been on my podcast. I've heard amazing things, and they've told me so much, and I still stay connected with them. It's about taking the time, not for yourself anymore, which you do need to do at times, but also getting connected with the people around you. I'm pretty sure we've all experienced the people that have what we call a wet towel personality, the one that's very, very bland. That's what everyone is having. It's an adopted thing now, to the point where after you get done talking to someone, you're like, fuck, I'm drained. I just need to go home, get a nice bubble bath going and start relaxing or doing something to get my mood up, because I've had conversations where I've been sitting there just like, you're draining me. Like, what do you mean? Like, and every answer they're giving you is just like, well, I guess so. Well, yeah, maybe. It's like, be yourself, be you. What happened? Where did you get suppressed? We're suppressed enough. This is why people rise up and fight against things.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with social media as well. It's like people lost the ability to communicate on a personal level, on a compassionate level, just on an interest level. It's like some people just don't want to have conversations anymore. And if you don't, that's cool. Don't give me the fake conversation though. You know what I'm saying? Don't waste my time.
I tell people, I'm like, I hate all people. I really do. I hate everyone. And they go, how can you say that? Like, you do a podcast, you talk to people. I'm like, no. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I don't hate all people. I hate the ones you guys show. The ones that everyone shows in the world today, the one that I encounter on the street. Right. I want to get that person down one-on-one conversation and find the real them, the real RL. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That it's literally what your name could be short for. Real. Just take the
Yes.
So I'm like, once I
Right.
sit you down and we have a good, you can't play a character for an hour. You can't hide
Right.
anything for an hour. It doesn't
Right.
happen.
Right.
I've had them go longer, 2 hours, 3 hours. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, because when you get lit up about something, when you get passionate about something, that's the real you. That's the one I want. That's the one I want to get to know, not the fake one, not,
Right.
some kid off Reddit messaging me saying he wants to be on the podcast. Next,
Right.
I got Unicorn Fart 3 in my podcast, and he's telling me everything from this and that. I'm like, where's the real you, bro? And then
Right.
next, I get the real him 30 minutes in. I delete all the rest that was before, and then we have another hour conversation. I'm like, look, man, it's taking the time to get to know one another. No acts, no any of this shit. Be the real you. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you hate. If someone likes it, if someone doesn't like it, then they're not fit for you. We're all not meant to be compatible, but we can take at least the time to get to know if we are or not.
Yeah, it's called authenticity, man. For us to be our authentic self. I do something on my podcast, which I'd like to do with you if you give me an opportunity, man. It's
Let's do it.
called the 7 Pillars of Society, and basically it's just seven topics, man, that will let the world know who you truly are, who you really are at your base, about topics that a lot of people don't have on a day-to-day basis, right? So I always started off with like this. Well, first and foremost, man, tell me where you are spiritually. Like, are you religious? Are you spiritual? Or are you none of the above? Like give me a synopsis of what you are spiritually.
For me, what I try and do the most is be open-minded. I try and see it from the other person's perspective. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I see where there's benefit to it, because I know someone I work with who his husband's completely paralyzed, and she tells me turn to God, and she's helped me out in times of my distress.
Right.
But I try and say, like, just because I don't understand it or I can't, believe in that, I'd like to think there's something out there. If God was Morgan Freeman, I fucking knew that shit. But
Right.
I mean, I'm an ordained minister under the United Church of Bacon because I decided that I would dive into parody religions after I got into an argument with 2 Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
It's all about understanding and finding the deep interpretations with life. The ordained Church of Bacon was just a safeguard for people who were atheists. It was all like, you're getting yelled at for not believing in anything. Well, then go under the Church of Bacon. And I saw with each parody religion, there was something with deeper meaning behind it. That was calling out, the focus of the main religions that were seen so dominant and constantly shoved down the throats. You are who you are. You have your beliefs, you have your environmental factors that conform you or shape you into this person you are today. And whether you have religion based in your life at a young age and you lose it, or whether you're older and someone like your son gets born, your daughter or whatever gets born, and you decide God is real because this thing is so beautiful, I can understand that, and then I would never try and change your view on it.
For sure. What do you think from your perspective? How do you think society looks at the two, spirituality and religion?
Well, spirituality and religion. When it comes to religion, is more about they coincide that with spirituality. But my aunt's a spiritualist, so she talks about the inner selves, and she lights candles and does these seances. And after she was telling me this on a podcast, I was like, fuck, like, how can I? This is one of my first episodes, so I'm like, how can I understand this? And I'm like, well, I have to do it. So I did it with her. 4:00 in the morning, I got my ass up. I went over onto the beach and I did these yoga chants and all these things. It's about knowing who you are inside of yourself. There's so many factors that play into your personality, and people think like, oh, to look good, you have to have a good physical, attribute. That's not true, because I've worked out every day for 7 years now, and I have a good physique, but my mental capacity was shit at a point. And I realize, it gets tested every day. And that's something I have to work on in myself. The brain is a muscle as well. I might as well train it. And also taking a time to kind of, with spirituality, the consciousness and finding your inner demons, all these types of things. We call them demons because they're bad, but it has nothing to do with religion. There's just something inside of us that we have to maintain what we call a homeostasis, a calming point, a level where we can find true, well, like the monks chase after, with true enlightenment.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Good deep stuff, man.
Did I answer the question? I feel
You
like
did. You
okay.
did.
All
You
right.
did. And everyone out there, see, like I always start with that question because number one, usually that question, not for everybody, but like if you just walked to the mall or something, like if people still go to malls, I don't even know, and just walked up to somebody random and you asked them that question, a lot of people are a lot standoffish when it comes to spirituality and religion. So if we can start there, then okay, now we know if you're being, you know what I'm saying, if you're being authentic, right? Because most people have to dig deep to talk about that.
Yeah, they can't hit it on the fly because no one wants to truly say anything. All they want to do is go, "Hi, I'm Jim. I'm a Democrat." I'm like, did you just fucking tell me your political party just by introducing yourself? Like, I just want you to know where I stand. I'm like, well, what ground are we on?
Right. Now that's a great segue because the next one I was going to ask you about politics, man. Like, what is your thought on politics in general, especially in America?
I think it's the fact that having one person run the whole entire country is a little bit dumb. I mean, it's stupid to think that we can rely on one person to do anything. But I think no matter man, woman, whatever color you are, nobody's going to do it correctly. You know, if we notice that all the presidents we say they were great presidents, it's because they were assassinated or taken out of office through something. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like they didn't. It's the Batman quote. They didn't live long enough to see themselves become the villain. You know, and now we're at a standpoint now where you've seen the right go to the left, to the left, to the right, and I say it's not something I'm super interested in, but like I've had podcasters that come on, they want to talk about politics the whole time and try and conform me. I'm like, dude, just be open-minded about shit. Like there are some good parts on one side, there are some good parts on the other, but they all come from your morals, how you were raised. Do you believe in family over this? Then you're going to believe in this towards that. Like politicians, the government's not the problem. It's people. People run the government, and the ones that get in the government are the ones that want to step on the throats of others to get what they want, to get the money aspect of things, which I hear and I'm like, it's true. They want to, knock off this so they can have this and get money in their pocket this way. That's all it is. The government's red, white, and blue, but it's run by people, and people are known to be faulty. And the sad thing is the people that get put in have a corrupted view on what it takes to get what they want, means stepping on the throats of others. So I'm like, when it comes to politics, doesn't matter to me. I like these things, I like those things. I'm in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it comes down to an agenda, man. They all have an agenda at the end of the day. And yeah, for someone to literally blindly follow certain policies because they want to be a Democrat or they want to be a Republican, to me is just, that's asinine. But, let me ask you this, though, for your generation, because I got a daughter almost as old as you, like she's 1 year younger than you. So we're in a different generation. For people that are of your generation, how do you think, like, do they pay attention to politics? Because I'm starting to think, like, once a lot of these older people die off and this next wave of people come up, how much is politics truly going to change?
So I have a theory. I've said it before, and it's going to make me sound kind of crazy, but I kind of want you to bear with me on this.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay, so there's always two things the government has been afraid of, and that's the people, and it's also religion. It is easily able to break up the minds of people by creating their attention elsewhere, creating a distraction, such if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, they could be like, oh, PETA got into a giant, I always use PETA because they're just funny to me. And they took off the bars on animal crackers. They took the animals behind the cages. They took them off that. So now every time you see animal crackers, they're not behind cages anymore. It's back in the day they used to be. But PETA fought to get that fixed. The government at the time was doing shady shit in Afghanistan and Iraq. So they said, we'll give you this. PETA ran with it. We beat the government and had this. And it was like they wanted to do a parade and shit. I'm like, they want a small battle over a giant war they know nothing really about. And I
Right.
say the easiest way, and Abraham Lincoln even said it best, a house divided cannot stand, because you can easily break up the people's attention. You can easily distract them with something that keeps them away from the big picture, so they'll never rise up when they're getting fully suppressed, which is why you're seeing kids, people start to shoot up stores nowadays, is because people are becoming oppressed and they're noticing it now. We've always kind of had a thumb on top of us, but it's been so much now where people feel like they can't be themselves anymore and it has to come out somewhere else. They're not talking to a family member, that social skill that we all need to fill. They can't
Right.
get that out. Like a connection you would get with a loved one is now turned into a connection you get with online followers. They're people that don't truly care about you. So then we look at, the religion. There's around all these people they call the millennials. A lot of them are non in belief of any religion. It's why a lot of Catholics and Christians are pro-Trump, because he's putting up immigration. Immigration is bringing over new religions to our country, where now Christianity is at 45%. People in this country now are Christians. That used to be not like a 90% were all
Yep.
Christian or Catholic.
Yep.
So now that's where they get upset, because they feel like they're being attacked. It's starting to break up into different groups, different gatherings of people now. And, eh, like I said, it's all, it's all a test. It's all something that, they're trying to see where we can go. They're trying to see how far they can get away with. People just want to be comfortable now. Everything's programmed a certain way so you get this, you'll benefit if you believe in this. And it's like, why can't I be myself?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, man. It's your religion, your point on religion was 100% true, man, because if you look at those numbers, if you guys can look them up out there, this country was predominantly Christian, different sects of Christianity, right? And most reason, and those numbers just continue to decline as more people are going, obviously finding out different type of religion, opening their mind, and also falling into spirituality to where they don't have an organized religion that they're actually following, which I think is really cool. But I think you hit the nail on the head, man. When it comes down to that, politics, you're going to see a big change in politics in probably the next 20 or 30 years because of that.
Yeah, before, what was the idea for having a president? He had to be Christian. He had to be a family man. I bet sooner or later we're going to see a different change where you're going to have maybe an atheist president. It's
I
all in
wouldn't
the
doubt it.
it's all in the concept of, like you were saying before, where the older generation is dying off and the newer generation is coming up and they're not in belief really of anything anymore. Where would that affect into politics? Well, they're not going to give a shit if you're Christian anymore. So then that gives a likely possibility of someone running for office and not having that family or Christianity aspect to them.
It comes down to two things. Like the way this country was built, the founding fathers of this country, they wanted two things. They wanted control and they wanted power. And the best way they could do both of those things, well, let's make everybody in this country Christian, right? Basic standards for you to follow. And as the years go by and the younger people and the more open mindedness comes out, you're starting to see them break away from that. And the older generations are scared of that. That's why you said they are pro-Trump, because he's putting a lot of things in place to continue that continuous doctrine when a lot of more open-minded individuals are starting to get into office. We just had our first black president. We have a gay president that's running this year. We have a Muslim president candidate that's running. We have a Muslim candidate. We have women candidates. So things are changing, and they're still trying to hold on to that old doctrination of gotta be a old white individual, with these certain what's what I'm looking for, certain ideologies to follow. And that old America is dead now. It's gone now, and it's going to be dead.
Well, I always bring this up because, like I said, I'm open-minded, but I always like to bring in the other perspective as well, because that's the best point of staying open-minded, is that you can, even if me and you agree that butter toast is awesome, then the conversation's over. So I always bring up the aspect, like, what about the people that don't like butter? What about the people that don't like bread? What about the whole concept of how long it takes to toast something? I always throw in these factors. It's not to argue. It's just to create that other perspective in there as well, where if someone tells me, you're like the two Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, were telling me you're going to hell if you don't believe in Christ. Time out. why do you believe that? Well, I understand this is your values, this is your perspective, this is how you're raised, and this is what your belief is. But why do you feel like you have the need to do that into someone else's life who might not understand or might not want to believe in something of this sort? And they go, well, they're lost. And I'm like, well, how can you say that about somebody? I know I'm in Ocean City, Maryland. I'm not fucking lost. I'm on looking over at the sign. I'm on 28th Street right now, bro. I
Right,
know
right.
exactly where I'm at. But I also know that people are going to have different developmental stages in their life that are going to form them a certain way. If you experience a tragic loss and turn to religion, it's going to, why you're always going to be in belief of it. Can't you understand that? And they're like, get out of here. I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't want me to walk away because I'm asking questions, which people are afraid to do. And we're living in a world where no one really asks questions anymore. It's like, ask the questions. Let's play 20 fucking questions and let's figure this shit out. Like, we're not going to agree on it. And, if I bring it up at a dinner table, it shouldn't be stigmatized. We choose to make it stigmatized because we like to sit there and argue about it. Don't argue, just talk.
Yeah, it's the whole concept of faith. Like, what is faith? Well, faith is believing in something that's not tangible, that you can't touch, you can't see, you can't really experience with any of your senses. So you have faith, right? It's a concept that was created so you don't ask questions. So you continuously follow, like a sheep, and you follow the word. And I'm not pointing out one specific religion or anything, but it's just the whole concept of faith. Basically, spawns closed-mindedness, cognitive dissonance. Like, it doesn't matter what I tell you, it doesn't matter what facts I give you, what knowledge I try to throw your way, you're not even going to acknowledge it because you're so honed in on that one specific ideology that nothing can deter you from thinking that way.
You'll see my podcast episodes. I'll release one about someone that was a hardcore like priest, and then he'll lost his religion. And then he tells me like what he was understanding about it being a hive mind. And then someone that's still in it, that's in the Jewish religion, and he starts talking about, how his all these things, all these beliefs. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm just understanding and then also trying to bring in another insight to the other perspective of things. I'm not arguing with them. I'm
For
not,
sure.
relating to them either. I'm just talking to them. You can't close somebody off from your life because they believe in a certain thing, but like people want to walk up nowadays. And I think kids like, I'm not to glorify myself here, but I'm a fucking rare person that thinks like that. Not even in
Oh,
my own age
100%.
group. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people, but you're not going to see this. But I said, with my friends, they call me an old ass because a lot of my notions and all my stuff is kind of old style. Like I critical think, or I like to, I like to be spontaneous, but at the same time, I like to know that there's a consequence if I be super spontaneous. And it's all about understanding and being open-minded, which I try and tell my friends to do. And I've seen an increase in their life. It's like my cousin, he's read the Quran, he's read everything, every major type of scripture, the Bible front to back, but he's taken massive psychedelic drugs. He's taken massive things that have shown him something where it feels like that can't just be it. And I
Yeah.
said, like, that brings in a whole nother perspective onto things. And he was understanding. He was like, but all religions are shit. And he just starts going ham on all these religions. I'm like, stop. You're already discrediting yourself as a person. And he's telling me, he goes, they all are a type of key bonding thing. But the problem is the way people express it nowadays is that they shove it down your throat to the point where you feel like you need to argue. You need to have that conflict in your life because
Right.
we have a social skill. We need conflict in our everyday lives. That's a thing. It needs to happen, whether it's your car breaking down, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's a small thing like this lane was closed, so you had to take the long route home, whatever that is, you need that conflict. When you don't experience it in everyday life, you come home, you turn on TV and you look for it. You look for it through reality television. That's where it plays most of the factors of, because it brings that sense of realism and connection where you're like, yeah, that bitch, she did say that about Jenny. And you're like, why am I getting like pumped up about this? It's because you didn't have it in your day. So you need to look for it somewhere else. You might create a conflict at home. You might do something. And when I see people that get freaked out in a store, get freaked out over something, I don't look at them and go, they're an asshole. I look at them and go, what is going on possibly in their life that might be affecting them. He's yelling at someone for having this many items in a line when it's only allowed this many items. Okay, well, let's see what does he drive? I see a spare tire on his car. He probably just experienced a flat. We don't know how to problem solve as people anymore. We just get overwhelmed and don't know how to deal with it. That's how he's expressing his anger. So I can't call him an asshole without getting to know him. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point, man. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know what their life is like, but too many times we basically project ourselves into other people and don't care. Like we talked about earlier, don't have that empathy, you know? Dude in the grocery store, yeah, you have no idea what he's going through. You have no idea why he's reacting the way he's reacting. And for you to even just make the judgment, based on nothing, no facts or anything, but based on how it's making you feel is a selfish act in itself, honestly.
Like I tell people, like I choose to use humor in my everyday life. I like to crack a fart joke. I like to go around and be joking all the time. I never like to be serious,
Right.
unless I tell you I'm serious, then everything I say basically is a joke. And it's all because I can be really smart and intellectual when I want to be, but I don't choose to show that a lot because that is a draining characteristic of things. Being critical on everything is very, 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 very draining. A lot of people are like, damn, like I wasn't ready for that at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's easier just to talk and conversate and be fun with people. And then if they want to take it serious, then we can get to a serious level. But it's the concept of like, be yourself, be unique, be who you are to be. I'm Robbie, and the only way you can ever determine what I am is by saying that I'm Robbie. And people are like, well, how the fuck am I? What does that mean? Do I talk to him or do I don't? Like, you just have to experience him yourself, man.
Yeah, when I'm only, my podcast is fairly new. I've only got 8 episodes right now. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and he asked me, because most of my work is film. He wondered why I did the podcast, and was ultimately it's like therapy to me because, like you just said, you like to joke around, you don't like to show your serious side too much. These conversations, like the conversation I'm having with you, the conversation I have on my podcast, I can't really have with anybody. Like within my circle, I work from home. If I'm doing film stuff, I'm doing film stuff. It's not really a time to conversate on deep shit. So it gives me the opportunity to talk about stuff that, that I believe, that I want to talk about, that, I enjoy having conflict and conversation about, and just things that are going on in my head. Because we don't, and I talked about those 7 pillars of society. They're conversation pieces that you can't have on the daily. You can't have on the average time because people do get offended, or they don't want to open up, or they don't want to be authentic. So that's ultimately what I use my podcast for. And being on here with you is a breath of fresh air, man. Because you have some similar qualities as well, man. Because like you said, you can't do this all the time. You can't do this with everybody.
It's like,
you can't do it on social media. You'll cause a shitstorm.
It's the same thing with Dave Chappelle's special. A lot of people gave him shit because he was attacking what they call hate culture. I'm like, he's not attacking it. He's pointing it out. He's pointing out that there's this thing that nobody's addressing that we've decided to all try and conform into. It's a little bit scary, but like you said, it's a form of therapy, podcasting.
Yes.
It's the same reason if I wasn't doing this, I'd be sitting down, lying down, or watching TV or something, nothing beneficial, but having this is like reading a book. It's like understanding and having the time just to conversate. You get a better feeling when you get done with it too.
For sure.
So what pillar are we on? We're on 3. Is that knocked down or what?
Yeah, let's see. We've done spirituality, religion. We've done politics. And the next one I'll touch with you is society, because a lot of things I talk about on my podcast have to deal with, racial issues or social issues, gender-related issues. What is your stance on kind of society's separation and hate and non-accepting in today's society? Like
Society gets played on by what we call mean world syndrome. It's a theory that the media, all these things, plays these negative influences. This is actually why in old folks' retirement homes, you'll see that their channels are locked on certain things, such as Wheel of Fortune, old school game shows, because it doesn't give them any news that is relative to what's going on now. Older people, like our grandparents or so, the first thing they would do is want to know what's going on around them. It's what people do nowadays. We want to know what's around our surroundings. We're becoming numb because we see a shooter on the television. Well, this stuff has happened throughout society. Crime, anything like this has always happened throughout history, but now it has a form of getting to us more and more and more. That content is hitting us right in the morning. This is why you'll see a kid who's watching TV in the morning. Next thing you know, he gets an Amber Alert on his phone telling him somebody was missing, telling him this is happening. And then he has that in his head throughout the whole entire day. What's happening is, media has become a major influence in society. It's how we get everything, all our information, and that's not a good way of getting our information. Mean World Syndrome, like I said, is just the media playing bad things all the time, where they get a distorted reality of what really things are. Society is built on structure. It's built on having these things, much like pillars, but they're built on shit that is old, stuff that they
Right.
know what works. It's called a template, you know. With society, what exactly do you mean?
Like, look, how do you view society as a whole, as far as how it's reacting to the influx? Let's just say from the media, for instance. You've had, especially in the Trump era, uh, you've had multiple racial hotbeds that have started up. Most recently in Texas, for instance, there was just a cop that killed a black woman in her home. Most recently, and that's being played up as a huge story. Not that it shouldn't be, for any type of murder, but like as far as the way the media is using, I shouldn't say using, that's a bad word. The way the media basically puts race and um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the LGBT community,
Okay, I
and
got I got you.
yeah, you feel
I think I got you. Well, that same scenario, if it was a black cop that shot an old white woman, would that get played on the news too? That, it's the weird concept of, we follow a racial bias as well. You'll see a lot more of a white person getting arresting or shooting a black person, because that's what also trends. People can outcry over that. They say discrimination, all this stuff. I had some dude try and tell me in a podcast that we need to pay reparations for all the damage that people have done, and I say that's bullshit. They said, "Oh, what are you, against race?" No. See, I've been a minority my whole entire life. At a place at work, I'm all around an all Latino housekeeping staff with colored people, black people, whatever you want to say. We choose to make this thing stigmatized. What happened in the past stays in the past for a reason, and we learn to work past that. But we're never going to get past it if we keep saying we need to pay reparations, we need to do this. Kids that are being born now don't need to pay reparations. They have no idea of what happened back then. We teach them what happened back then, so they understand what people have been through. But you're not born racist. You're not born anything. To me, you treat me with respect, I treat you with respect, no matter the color of your skin. And one of my options to go get my bachelor's degree is to go to a college where I'll be a minority. And they were like, well, why don't you just pay $8,000? You can go to a school where you'll feel comfortable. I'm like, the fuck did you just tell me? Did you just say go to a different all white school where literally there's a Starbucks on the campus just because I'll feel comfortable? They're like, yeah, don't you want to be around? I'm like, no. I've been different my whole entire life. No matter what someone's skin color is, my mind is completely different from somebody who might have the same skin color as me. That doesn't mean a damn thing for me. I've dated black girls. I've dated whatever you want to say. That I don't see that, because it's only the concept of, we hold that to bar. If I like somebody, I'm not going to discriminate just because of the color of their skin. Then my idea, like, we're all getting fed this information from something. It's all someone else's view
Mm,
turned into our view. Like, if you
mhm,
ask, like, what's your thing on politics? Well, I believe in this. No, you believe what someone else believes. It's all someone else's shit. It's all someone
mhm,
else's stuff that you got fed to. So I had a transgender person on my podcast.
mhm.
From in my head, the first questions I were asking were like, do you think it's cool to switch back and forth? Do you think it's cool to be like, identify as an astral sign, all this other type of stuff? They said, no, I'm transgender, but there are some people that take the ridiculous notions of things because they can. They notice an in where they can get it in. They notice something where they can easily get a pass because they can identify as this, identify as that. And it makes fun of the people who are legitimately suffering. For me, I have body dysmorphia. I have a little bit of a distortion of how I look. But for him, I'm going to say him because he's been taking male testosterone for 10 months now, shout out. And he was like, imagine looking in the mirror and not liking what you see, feeling like God gave you the wrong parts. And I
Right.
said, holy shit. I see that on a daily basis. I have a six pack, but I don't see that in myself. I think that could be always better. That could always be this, that could always be that. And I remember how I once was. And it was able to way to hit to me that I started being able to relate. You know, my grandma, I didn't know until just 2 years ago, my whole life. I didn't know she was lesbian. I never even asked the question because kids don't fucking think about that.
Right.
Put that
Right.
shit in their head. I asked my dad, I was like, wait a minute. She's getting married to what? And my dad said, what do you mean? What? She's been married when you were staying over there for weeks. I would only see her 2 weeks out of the summer. So like
Yeah.
she's away from me. So I would get that interaction. I figured I didn't question anything that her lover was wearing jeans, a belt, short hair. I didn't question any of that shit. I was
Just normal.
playing fucking Wii, playing Harry Potter.
Right.
They're sitting there completely different with pictures all around, like the small pictures around the house of them married together, just sitting there like standing or whatever. I never even asked. And I said, wait a minute, she is? And he goes, does that bother you? I'm like, no, but that's some fucking information you should shoot my way. I had no idea. And I asked her about it too. She listens to the podcast. She's like, you really didn't know? I was like, I fucking asked you. Like, I didn't know any of this. And she was like, did it matter? I'm like, no, I still love you, but I understand. Like, it's we're not born with that.
No, and the media, and what I meant by that, I didn't word it, very succinctly, man. What I meant by the whole media aspect of it is like, I said something on my podcast a few episodes ago. It was news that Malik Yoba, the actor, is interested in transgender women. Like, how is that news? That's not news. But yet they push it down society's throats and automatically make them separate and make them think like, there's a difference between this and this, and I'm supposed to be this way and I'm not supposed to be that way. And the fact that Malik Yoba likes transgender women, well, you know what? That's news. That's something I got to read about. How could he like transgender women? It's always with a negative connotation. With the race stuff, for me, every situation is different. It's all case by case. But like you just said, if it was a black cop shooting a white woman, no, it probably wouldn't be on the news. But you have to understand the history of that.
Yeah.
Since it's like anytime you have a problem with something, anytime something happens, it's going to be amplified. I don't know if you watch sports, but like, for instance, I'll use an example for anyone out there who watches sports. J.R. Smith, the basketball player, has a reputation. So guess what? Anytime something happens that's anywhere outside of the box and J.R. Smith's involved, it's automatically going to be a huge issue because he has a reputation. You know what I'm saying? So
it's the same thing.
Like
you can take with Bill Cosby, for instance, beloved comedian, beloved thing. And then people were coming out saying all these things that he did and nobody would believe it because that was a comedy father. That was everyone's grandpa,
right.
Theo, all this type of shit. You couldn't believe that. But I'm like, it just shows you that he was a suppressed person. He had something inside of him. I'm not saying what he did was good. I'm not saying what he did was bad. Well, obviously it was bad, but it's the idea that we all have these things, but we show a character. We show a person on stage. We show this type of demeanor because we live in a hive society that creates this, that obtains this. You need to be the Instagram star where trends start to hit. You can get a couple $1,000s playing Fortnite, win a competition, do these types of adaptive things. They're going to add gaming into the Olympics because they notice the hand-eye coordination. That makes sense. But also at the same time, you're understanding influences that are affecting us. For cops, okay? I see it from both sides of the view. That sucks. The person got shot, but you're looking at them from color. You're not looking at them as a person. That's a person that just lost a life that is no longer on this earth anymore. Right. Whether they were good or bad, whatever they had, whatever struggles they faced that turned them into the person they were, or whatever they weren't facing before that turned them into the person they were. That life is still gone. That's a consciousness, a thought that is no longer on this earth with us that we're not able to interact with anymore.
For sure.
See it from the family's perspective, but also see it from a person's perspective who's watching the news and gets that played into their mind. They're immediately going to start having hate towards cops. They're going to immediately start hating this. The sad thing is, cops are good, but cops are bad because cops are people.
Yep.
Crime. There's good stuff where there's an action taken, such as maybe somebody was like there was a dude that shot a dude in the middle of an airport because the guy killed his son and got off, and literally he shot the guy. It's on camera in an airport, and the cops, they just took him to the ground. Nobody beat him, nobody did anything. They just took him down, and they arrested him and they walked him out of there. But I guarantee you on the way out there, like, good fucking job, because his son was raped, his son was molested in a horrible, horrible way, and the dude that did it was getting off. That is what we call a justified crime.
Right.
That literally has a word for it. Now, that's not something that he should have done. He obviously took a dramatic kind of a drastic thing to it, but he saw that as being the only answer. I say look at it from all perspectives. Cops, whether they're white, whether they're black, they have things in their life, interactions that they feel on a daily basis that make them form the decisions they have. Such as being in a shooting, such as being in this. Next time they go to arrest somebody, they're going to have a fear that person has a gun on them, and they're going to be aware. When I was hit by I learned this from my own personal experience. I got hit by a fucking jet ski. Okay.
Oh,
I was doing my guiding job, and a dude ran up my jet ski going 40 miles an hour and hit me like a fucking doll, threw me right off my jet ski.
wow.
Now, whenever I would guide after that, which I did for a couple of years later, you shut your jet ski off. You didn't come near me. I had PTSD towards it. That's what it is. Cops experience that as well. Any type of interaction with people, you start to experience PTSD. Me and you have it subconsciously. We don't even understand it. And it's all because we're afraid to ask someone how their day is, because it's going to be a bad answer. It's going to be a bunch of shit that you can't handle in your own life. So you're either expecting a default answer or you're expecting that bad answer. I mean, how many times do you use self-checkout? I do. I use self-checkout because the one time I put my stuff up on the counter, the woman's like, I'm like, how's your day going? I had one cabbage. I literally put it on the table. I said, it goes up to the thing. She rings it, and she goes, and I go, how's your day going? She goes, don't get me started about my day. And I'm like, fuck, I was not ready for this. I wasn't ready. And I tell people, like, you experience these types of things, these notions when it comes to crime, when it comes to a cop. You're asking a person to be authoritative. You're asking a person to be in the authority mindset. You want to know a good Netflix that really highlights that, even though it was known to be a faulty experiment? The Stanford Prison Experiment.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
If I get a set of people and tell them they have to act this way, even though they know it's an experiment and they're not really that person or that role, some will take on the role position and some will just sit there and still treat people like people. The thing is, if I give you a badge, you're immediately going to start thinking you're better than everybody else.
Yep, for sure. Well, the next one, man, which I know that you can get extremely deep in since you studied psychology in school, but mental health, man. There's a big push. There's a big push. I shouldn't say push. Push isn't a good word, but like you can tell that it's more in the forefront in society now than it's been probably ever. But what are your experiences with it? Number one, I mean, if you've dealt with any mental illnesses, or anybody who has, and how do you think that society is dealing with that nowadays?
Can I ask you the same question?
Of course.
I kind of want to hear your answer.
Yeah, mental health.
Yeah. Do you suffer from anything?
At the moment, no, I do not. I did deal with a little bit of depression in my early 20s. Never diagnosed. But looking back and having more knowledge and information on it, I know that that's what I was suffering from. But my first marriage, my wife had serious social anxiety, like really bad social anxiety. And I knew, like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to deal with it. I never took the time to research it because I didn't think it was anything. I thought, oh, you're having, you have trouble going out in crowds. Just don't worry about it. It's all mental. It's nothing big. I never took it seriously at all till it was too late. Honestly. And when I say too late, she's not dead or anything, but we're not together anymore. And once I realized what that actually was, I just felt like an absolute asshole because I never took the time to understand that it's a real thing, like it's a real illness. It's no different than having a disease or breaking your leg or some other physical ailment. It's actually, it's a true sickness. And the more information you have on it, the more you can be there for, loved ones or whoever the case may be. But if you don't have that knowledge, number one, you should never speak on it if you don't have the knowledge. And I just if somebody is dealing with it, do your research, understand it. Um, that to me, that was probably, as you can probably tell, as I'm getting a little choked up, it's probably the most impactful uh, mental health situation that I've dealt with personally. Um,
Okay, well, here's what I'm going to say to that. People all experience mental health, and if you don't suffer from something such as severe depression or anything like that right now, doesn't mean you can't develop it later in life. A lot of
100%.
people think that they made it out of the fire. They made it clear. No, you can constantly have that happen to you. It can happen at any age. You can suffer from something. The DSM-5 criteria is what a lot of therapists use to diagnose patients. The funny thing is about therapy and being a psychiatrist or just understanding the world of psychology is everyone who usually tries to dive down that rabbit hole suffers from a mental affliction. Every therapist has a usual mental affliction to them. Maybe not everyone, but most of them do. Mostly because the funniest thing is you can't diagnose yourself. You can only give a better insight into other people's heads. So that's why a therapist will hire a therapist to talk to a therapist. Like, it's a little bit
Right.
strange, but it's also ironic. And it's crazy because with mental health, like, I do suffer from something. It's called ADHD. That's considered a mental health disorder. It's also called a disability as well, mostly because I can't function like the average person.
Yep.
What's functioning? What's this? What's that? I know that I can't get sleep. Okay, my ADHD gives me insomnia, so I'll be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I use it to my benefit. Instead of playing on my cell phone, I'll be in a podcast with someone from Australia. I don't need a lot of sleep. I really don't. I can benefit off a couple hours. Yeah, 8 is obviously good, but I can't find myself sleeping for that long. I can only find myself for sleeping at a couple hours on a time. So we look at mental health. Okay, when I started taking my psychology classes, you would get these work you would have to do. You'd have to watch an hour case study of a certain mental disorder, whether it was OCD, whether it was schizophrenia, whether it was all these types of impactful things into people's lives. And I would watch it at 4 o'clock in the fucking morning. And immediately you saw the negative energy where we talk about empathy getting played. Okay. Energies that people give off. I would watch this case study. One, for example, I always bring up is the schizophrenic kid who's around like 15, 14 years old, who tried to set his whole house on fire and kill his family because he believed King Tut, the Egyptian pharaoh, was outside of his house trying to kill him. He was throwing brick glass at the sliding glass door. After watching an hour of this kid's diagnosis in his life and his explanation of it in his mind and him crying and all these types of things, I shut my computer off. My work was done for the week. I had class later on. I went downstairs, got a little bit of cereal. My mom asked me, like, "Hey, like, how's your day going?" Or like, "You're up early," or something like that. And I said, "Please, nobody talk to me for the rest of the day." And I went upstairs and I lied down. Didn't go to class. Didn't go to anything because I was put in such a shitty mood where I just didn't want to go out in the world anymore. And that's what people are experiencing nowadays. Your work job gets so tough, you go home and you don't want to go have fun anymore. You just want to watch Netflix and not associate with anybody. Well, mental health is a severe thing, and now you're seeing it get placed on kids at a younger age because of the type of media news that they have a bigger outlet to reach those types of things. When I was a kid, my worst problem in the world wasn't what was going on in the news, was that on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Carlton didn't do his dance this episode. That was my biggest issue, something that's of that similar sort. But now kids are looking at their phones, they're seeing all the stuff on social media, all these things that people have that no one doesn't have. It starts playing a giant toll on anxiety and depression, where a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old can experience it. I know when I see someone with OCD, for example, someone I work with that has to wash his hand a certain amount of times, has to do these types of things, has a little bit of a ritual. It's a coping mechanism to deal with the types of things that he's built up in his head that helps him correlate with just being able to go on with a certain process of doing something. It's crazy to see because I know people that have social anxiety, like one person in particular who came on my podcast. On the podcast, he admits to having a shot of vodka at 7 o'clock in the morning before he was supposed to be at my house, just to be able to sit on a one-on-one conversation with me at my house. I said, "Why would you do that? You know my personality." And he says, "I have such bad social anxiety. This is how I start my day." It's the same thing you can relate to someone that thinks it's a ritual or something they have to do before they get on an airplane because they believe that that's what's going to save them. You won't get into an airplane crash if you have, you kiss the plane 3 times or do whatever. We built these things up as coping mechanisms to hide something that we're suffering from.
No, for sure. I'd say this. I deal with a slight amount of social anxiety, which especially as the years have gone by. Not to the level where I'm taking shots just to do a podcast, but no, there are times, man. Like I just thoughts. Like sometimes, I like to throw fight parties, little boxing fight parties, and sometimes I just won't feel like it because I just don't want to deal with people. Or if I'm invited to somebody's house to watch the game, and I don't really want to go because I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to have, those conversations at that moment in time. Like you said before, check out. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just want to check out, and I'll make those decisions. The first short film I did was on mental health and mental illness called Beyond the Bridge. You can check it out on YouTube. And it basically showed, it was basically a story about 3 different people who were dealing with 3 different types of mental illness and how they kind of coped with it. And they were all intertwined together. And then at the end of the movie, we actually had live personal testimonials from people who are actually dealing with it. So check, for all you guys listening out there, check that out just to and it gives you some good information on it and the experiences that you can have, unfortunate experiences you can have with mental health as well.
Once you start learning about mental health and all the disorders, even if you have one and you don't have that specific one, you understand what it can play an effect. But it doesn't mean you understand the disorder. My buddy's mom, who ended up taking her own life because she suffered from severe schizophrenia, okay? She ended up taking her own life from it. Now, it was something where I first met her and I never even addressed it because she was taking medications. But for schizophrenia, there is no cure. There is no something, even medications have to get bumped up, all these types of things. You have to take it because it will happen to you. I'll never understand what she saw. Someone with schizophrenia is different from someone else with schizophrenia. They all experience something different. Somebody with ADHD is different from someone else with ADHD. They're all different depending on the unique individual. So once you understand that people have these things about them where they can build up a ritual or build up some type of mental health disorder or develop a disorder or be born with a disorder, you start to understand that you need to also take the time for that individual and create him or create them with their own unique amount of limit. It's the same reason why learning capabilities are different for each person. That's all it is. Yeah. It's a learning process on how to deal and how to cope with these people. Not these people being a pejorative word saying like these people. No, it means that they're people, but they're people that suffer from something. We all suffer from something. We all like a certain thing. We all get stuck in a routine. We all get stuck in a habit, an addiction, all these types of potholes that affect our brain because our brains are something that are so fucking awesome, but we understand so little about.
Oh, for sure. For sure. My stepdaughter actually has ADHD as well. And school has been a major issue for her. Because she can't seem to connect with the teacher that doesn't understand, number one, a student that has ADHD, but also is dealing with 20 other kids that have 20 different issues, right? So we decided to homeschool her because like for us, like that's the best way that we can teach her the way that she needs to be taught because we understand her and we also understand what she's dealing with. And she's been doing great. So I don't know if anyone out there, if any of your kids have ADHD, look to other resources if it's not happening at school. Because I know education, and because all they want to do is push pills down your throat.
Remember when I told you the education system gave up on me?
Yeah.
Well, that was because of ADHD. Back in the day, it was easy to throw a pill my way rather than
right,
because we didn't know too much about it. So, but back then, society didn't know this thing. I think the fucking peanut allergy was becoming a thing too. That one seems like an adaptive one because I hear a lot of people say that was never a thing, but it's crazy because they thought I was mentally retarded. They literally thought like I needed to be put in a special school. I actually explained in one of my podcasts, you can look up, his name is Jared Johnson, who was on.
Okay.
I was saying throughout my podcast about this room that they would throw me in. And it was like just a white room with a desk and all this shit, and had one window. It was basically they ended up turning it into a bathroom. But they would throw me in there because it was easier to put me in there and isolate myself rather than have me around everyone else. And as I was explaining this room, he starts finishing the description of it. And he goes, dude, my brother's mentally challenged and he's 2 years behind us. And when we were leaving that school, he was coming in, and the kid I used to explain that was in that room when I was leaving was his brother. So it was a weird, deep connection that we had because we didn't even know that. Like I didn't know anything about him really when it comes to his brother and everything.
Right.
It was really just telling more truth to the story. But I had one of my teachers on my New Year's Day podcast. I have only had 3 teachers in my life that have never given up on me. This teacher taught me in 3rd grade. Her name is Chrissy Ulrich, and she worked with my ADHD. She saw I didn't get enough energy out at lunch or after lunch at recess. She would kick the ball farther for me to go get it. She would ask me to round up like all the stuff they were playing with on recess. She put eraser caps on my pencils just to be able to drum on the desk because she knew I was going to get my energy out some way.
Wow. Okay.
And you need those people in your life. And I've had very few people work with me. I know one class I took, my teacher was like, man, you're not really supposed to be in here. It's because the education system fucked you. They didn't give you math. I didn't get math for 3 years. Hold on. That's bad English. I did not have math for 3 years. So they just totally skipped me out. I get to my senior year, you need 4 math credits or you need 3 math credits. I'm like, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to put you in this class called alternative education where you just show up and you get an A. I was like, okay.
Wow.
So I would sit in there on my phone with all these kids. It's basically ISS where all the bad kids go. All these kids were cussed out a teacher. I'm sitting around and I'm just sitting there on my phone, like looking up things to build a pond with my buddy when I get off school, like going up to his house and just building my own koi fish pond, which I did successfully. And I was sitting there like, oh, this fish costs this much. This is what we can fill in this. This is the water that works with this, finding ways to increase my own whatever outlet I was interested in. And my teacher would be like, Rob, like, I know you're bored, dude. Do you want to like go walk around school? I'm like, yeah. So I would just go into gym class. I would literally just leave because he trusted me. He knew I was there. He's like, yeah, just come in, make sure you're here, and then, leave. We would watch The Walking Dead on his computer because it's all these types of people that learn how to work with your capabilities and understand that you're just a person trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
But
man, it's the experience I've had, with my stepdaughter, man. It's been, not the same exactly what you're saying, but I mean, she went through a point where she just was not being taught in a way that she could actually comprehend math. So I don't know if math is a similar thing for other individuals with ADHD as well.
Fucking numbers, and then they add letters. Don't do that shit. No. I'm never going to want to know when actually I podcast with someone who's a train conductor and I used this. Okay. I was like, your life turned into a math problem where station A is this far away and station B is traveling at 25 miles an hour. It's like, I understand it, but like I said, the education system could be fixed if they just which I think, with my little faith I have in it, it was restored when I was talking to my teacher and people that are like her that are becoming more relevant in the education system because now they have kids that are experiencing mental health disorders. And they face a whole group of problems too, with such as cell phones. How hard is it to keep a kid's attention when they have the cell phone in their pocket? But looking at with ADHD, for instance, now they're narrowing down to your nutrition. Instead of giving them the chocolate milk at lunch, that's going to give them more energy. Give them a juice and maybe a small side of something else instead of the sugar cookie or something. And they're noticing changes. They're noticing things. But I say it's going to take time. It's going to take more rationalization, I believe, with all the types of anxieties and disorders that are coming out now. It's going to be a little bit, you're going to see the education probably system change a little bit for the better.
Let's hope, man. I hope so. Well, that's pretty much, that's mental health, man. All right. So the last three pillars are a little more lighthearted, a little more fun. Are you into sports at all?
I try to, but every time I go to watch something, I end up doing something else. It's the bad part about ADHD.
All right. So my question to you, because sports is one of the pillars, but my angle towards you, just from conversating with you, would be like, because your response is what I hear a lot from that generation, like the younger generation. I guess the millennials, I guess would be the name for it. But I mean, sports, like at least for my generation, kids my age, you know, that's all they did was watch sports or played sports. But now that has shifted. And obviously it's because there's a lot more options out there. But like when you think of sports, playing sports, watching sports, or, you know, your peers, you know, how do you see sports and like the impact it's having in their life?
I think a lot of people
Right
that
now.
are super into sports now is because they have that connection with their family. The only reason I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan is because my dad's a Baltimore Ravens fan, and his whole side of the family is from Baltimore. Whenever I would watch a football game, was a way to bond. I'm guessing you're a Steelers fan.
No, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. Y'all took my team, so
Oh,
that's a
I
little.
get that. It's all right. We the Colts left us in the middle of them.
That's true. That's true. I guess it all comes around, right?
But like it's crazy because if you really look at a lot of why people are addicted to sports, why kids like my age love sports and all these types of things, is because they had formative moments with their parents. But now
Yeah.
a lot of kids that, the dominant popularity of them not experiencing sports or not giving a shit about sports is because their family is worried about other things. There are newer generations that are coming out that are their parents are like, I don't have time to watch a fucking sports game. I have to go back out to work because I can't sit and relax. I'll have to hear it on the
Right.
radio. Back in the day, your parents were home at a certain time. You ate meals together. You conversated. You had bonding experiences on the weekends. Now you don't have your weekends off anymore. You don't have these types of things happen. So where you're seeing sports kind of dwindle off. Well, there's still going to be people that are passionate about it, but they're only going to care about certain key players rather than caring about the whole team.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that. And a lot of the young, especially with football, because look, football from a social angle, from a social standpoint, is basically runs America. I mean, it basically runs America. It's one of the biggest corporations in America. It moves the needle. It gets into politics. It's obviously a huge entity in this country, and you're seeing a lot of a lot of the parents not allowing their kids to play football because of health risk. So you're seeing a lot of that, and once I'd say the viewership and the interest in the NFL, for instance, is starting to dwindle down a little bit. Baseball is like, which was quote unquote America's pastime, is probably less popular than it's ever been. More people are into the NBA now, but you're starting to see through these younger generations, you're starting to see sports start to take a decline. And I'd be interested. And you're also, like you talked about video games. I mean, you're seeing video games on a steady incline. So I'd be very interested in 20 years what that looks like as far as from a percentage standpoint between video games and sports.
I definitely think there's going to be a shift.
Yeah, man. And I could see by the little Fallout posters behind you, you're a gamer.
Like I said, before I had the gym, I had video games. That was my bonding experience because my parents worked 2 jobs, so they didn't have a lot of time to be home. So that was a connection for me, was being able to communicate with my friends and play video games all the time.
Yeah, you made a good point about sports and family, because when I think, because I'm an older generation, and I'm a pretty hardcore sports fan. I used to be a hardcore video game fan too, but that as I got older and I had kids, it started to kind of go down a little bit. But it all comes down to really like my uncle. My uncle was just this. He was like sports. When I think of my family growing up, like he was sports. He was the one that started me in fantasy football and wanted to go to every one of my sporting events and everything. And I really connect everything to him. And it's not just me. I think everyone, all my cousins and brothers, and they're all interested in it because of him. So I think we all do identify it from a family standpoint. That's a good point, man. Interesting. All right. What about all right, next pillar, film. You a movie buff, movie fan?
Hell yeah.
All right, what's your favorite movie?
Oh shit. Okay. Big Lebowski, all-time #1.
Oh wow. I was surprised. I'm surprised. Okay.
Nobody
Wow.
watches that fucking movie. My parents don't even know that movie. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this is around your time period. Who doesn't remember when fucking Larry's Homework? Are you kidding me? That movie, I decided to join the Dudism, that religion.
Yes,
I
man.
got my freaking degrees above my actual college diploma that literally say the Church of the Latter Saint Dude, Robbie
Oh,
Robertson, Field of Comedic Science. What the fuck
that's
is that? I have no
that's a
clue.
cult classic, man. Absolute cult classic. What's the last movie you saw in the theater?
Oh, dude, I haven't seen movies in theaters for like 4 or 5 years now.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just it became like for me, spending $5 on a t-shirt is a lot. I save all my money. I save
Yeah.
everything. I got a good amount in the bank because it's a safety net.
Okay.
For instance, someone in my family's car that just broke down recently,
Right.
$600 to get it fixed. I
Gotcha.
fucking tossed that out like it was nothing. And that's
Nice.
not to be a baller or anything. That's to show like we have these, like some people have a safety net for a reason, whether it's for them or for someone else that they care about. So might as well use it.
Yeah, you definitely got an old soul, man. Because I know a lot of 20-year-olds that ain't saving shit. So that's good,
There's
bro.
a dude at my work that just feels like he's working all the time. He hates it,
Yeah.
but he only has like I think a couple grand in the bank, and he's like he spends all his money, every paycheck, just going out and drinking. I'm like, that's why you don't have fucking money. Like you
Right.
need to prioritize too. Like, do you want to be doing this for the rest of your life? Well, I hope I'm not doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I want to do something better and evolve it into something. So I'm going to put
Right.
everything away. So when I figure out what that is.
Gotcha. Well, what kind of movies you like? You like comedies, obviously. You like?
I do my Netflix special. If the FBI looked at it, they'd be like, "What the fuck? Like, what is this guy watching?" I'd be watching comedy special, comedy special, comedy special, comedy special, killer drama, and then like severe true crime and something else. And I go under all of it because I understand movie, much like a movie film buff like yourself. You
Right.
understand it from a creative aspect. I've
Yes.
seen popular movies that are really good. I've seen popular movies that are complete dog shit. I've seen independent films that have not had any advertisement but sneak into the industry. Next thing you know, you're like, holy fuck, that was better than a Disney film.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good stuff, man. What was I gonna? Oh, I had something that just popped out of my head about film.
There's so many factors that plays into making a good film, whether it's just the basis of budget, whether it's the basis of, a concept, whether it's the basis of a story, whether it's the basis of actors. Christian Bale, for instance, going out of his way with weight gain transformations and weight loss transformations to play his roles. From the Machinist to Batman to let's
Right.
talk about, it's all the concept of there are a lot of factors that can be lacking, but there are some where you wouldn't even think, whether it's like the camera angle, whether it's whatever it is, that can really do a film justice.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned quick was how fucking hard it is to make a movie. it's an ordeal, but once you do it, if you're interested in that type of thing, it's an amazing experience, but it is an absolute ordeal.
Some of my favorite things were when I took communication arts class, we would film, we did iconic, like we had to do a project. We had to do iconic music videos and iconic films. I did a scene from Step Brothers. I did a scene from so many different comedies that I loved because it was a way of me and my friends just be able to shoot the shit and have fun doing it. But when I was editing it, I was like, holy shit, like we have to get a low shot. This is what a low shot is when we see that. A following shot. What the fuck? I didn't know what that was. I just watched the film and think it was all like one camera. No, it's different angles.
Yep. Complex, very complex. I remember what I was going to ask you. You said comedy stuff. So you like stand-up comedy?
For sure.
You got a favorite stand-up comedian?
I like Joe Rogan, mostly from his podcast. I like Dave Chappelle. I like them all, to be honest with you. There are only some where like I'm sitting there, I'm like, damn, they're just cracking dick jokes the whole time. They're just cracking this the whole time. I'm like, it's funny, but it's not my type of humor usually.
Gotcha. Cool.
Like I see everything because my whole family's music. My whole family is, creativity. So I'm like, I try and see it from a creative aspect too, whether if I'm the audience or not for it. Just because I didn't like the joke doesn't mean it's not funny. It just means it's not funny to me. There's
different strokes, different folks, man. All day.
Exactly.
I mean, you can ask 5 different people. They're going to have 5 different answers on what type of comedy they like. You ever go see comedy live?
A couple times, some improv stuff, not anything major.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about going to see someone live is that it almost doesn't matter. Like you're going there with the intention to laugh,
or be offended.
Yeah, or be offended. And it's always funnier live than when you watch. I remember I went to go see Martin Lawrence live, and this was recent. This isn't young Martin. This is definitely older Martin. But I went there live, and it was like, wow, man, Martin still got it. It was a great show. It was about an hour long comedy special. They played the same one on Showtime, and I watched it again, and I didn't laugh once. Like I couldn't believe how bad it was compared to seeing it live.
It's the omnance or the ambiance and the environmental factor that plays into, you know, your surroundings. A horror movie is going to have way more of an impact if you watch it in theaters when they dim the lights on, rather than when we watch it at your house. You know, it's going to have a different role to it. And like, I watched Avengers Endgame on my phone because I wasn't going to sit 4 hours in the theater.
Oh, yeah,
dude, I was like, it was all right. And my buddy's like, did you fucking see it on your phone or in the theater? I'm like, on my phone. He's like, that's why. I'm yeah, it's true.
Yeah, Avengers like a theme park, man. You gotta, you gotta watch that one in the theater. But last pillar is music, man. You brought up music. You said your family's into music. Like what's your background in music? You know, you got favorite artists, favorite types?
I don't have. I mean, I like reggae music a lot. I like all those types of things. But I find myself, you know, my parents are all broadcasters and DJs. Everyone's in a band. My dad.
Oh, wow.
It was. I mean, my biggest impact when I was a kid. My dad's a hardcore Kiss fanatic. He did a Kiss tribute band called Rock Bottom. So I knew my dad is like Peter Criss, the Cat Man. Like I knew my dad is that. You know, when a Kiss toothbrush came out, it was the first thing I had. You know, it was so many things. Like a lot of music, I love it all, dude. To be honest with you, I really don't like the main produced type stuff you see nowadays, because it seems like everyone's, I get that it's popular, you know, Post Malone, all these types of things, but I don't see the passion in the music anymore. I think the best part about music was the creativity it would inspire. You know, it was like a chef making a dessert or making a dish. You get to see a piece of them in the action. From Red Hot Chili Peppers, a band, a favorite of mine, 311.
Nice.
I've met Slightly Stupid. I smoked a joint with the singer on my birthday. Shout out to him.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I was not supposed to be at that concert. And you know, it's to seeing, you know, 311, to seeing and meeting Pepper, to meeting Slightly Stupid, to meeting the Expendables, to playing Mortal Kombat on their tour bus, to meeting the Dirty Heads. Like, all my parents are in radio, so I got to meet these people. And it was like, to show that made them a better artist in my mind, that they still had the human capacity to not glorify their life. Like, I'm too famous for you. I'm too famous for this. And like, where you see people that are super famous treat their fans like shit. And then like, that's what makes me belittle their music. It's like, okay. And then when they just go in and they say a couple words, like Snoop Dogg always says it, like the mumble rappers and all that type of shit.
Right.
It's all because the creativity in the music's lost. If you know the process of being in a band, like I've been in a band, it's not easy to create things. Sometimes it comes naturally to somebody, but also it is a process where you have to put your heart and soul into it as well. I have no Outcast, you know, all these types of bands too that are favorites. My Temptations, dude. I'll fucking listen. My Pandora or Spotify playlist is literally fucking random as hell. You'll Frank Sinatra, fucking Expendables, then AC/DC, then it's like Metallica, then it's Avenged Sevenfold, then it goes to Johnny Cash, then it goes, because I love it all. It's all whatever mood you're experiencing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mood music, man, for sure, 100%. Yeah, music. It's especially for someone like for myself, because I used to do it. And I always took it, I'm a writer at heart. Like at the core of all of it, I'm a writer. So like my music always had like insightful written lyrics. And to listen to, for instance, like, because hip hop was a culture I was raised by. To listen to hip hop nowadays is very tough for me, because like the basis of all hip hop to me is like poetry. It's like what's written on paper and how you recite it. And to hear what's going on now and what they're rapping about or what they're talking about or what they're even singing about, it's very disheartening for something that I've grown to love. Because to me, art should evolve, and it's not evolving. It's declining. Back.
Yeah, it's because, you know, it's so easy for the studio to pay you this much money just to use your voice or use something like this. We'll give you a beat that works. It's a trend thing. You know, it's something catchy. It's going to make you tap your toe to it. Get in the spotlight. It's not worried about lasting through the ages anymore.
No, not anymore, man. Not anymore. It's It's tough. Hey, man, history repeats itself. So maybe, we'll see it come around some point in the future. At least I hope.
I pray for it.
Right,
I don't know.
exactly.
Who I'm praying to. Maybe Morgan Freeman, but it's the whole concept. Like I said, it's
Morgan
about.
controls a lot of shit, so he might make it
He
happen.
did a documentary on God, man. He's basically letting us know that that's what it is.
Yeah, man. For sure. 100%.
Was that all your pillars?
That's all 7, man. That's all 7 pillars, bro.
Did I pass the test?
I think you passed, man. You got like a 73. No, nah, man. You're
God, it's my high school years all over again. Oh.
Right now, you're extremely insightful, man. For real, dude. I got to get you on my podcast, man. I'd love to have you on there.
Yeah, man, for sure. I definitely want to give you here a minute at the end, man. I want to give you a time to promote your podcast a little bit, tell people where they can find you. And hey, man, if you ever need a guest, I'm down to be on. Just shoot me a day.
Hell yeah, man. Look, you can find me on Instagram at RL Malpica. That's where you'll see most of my podcast promotion. I'll throw snippets up there as well as some other entertaining things if you follow me there. But to actually get the podcast is on SoundCloud. It's called Minds Like Minds. So you just search that in SoundCloud. You can get it on Spotify. It's on there. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's also on YouTube. So those are the different places you can find it there. We also have a Facebook page, Minds Like Minds Podcast, with a Facebook group. Now, if you get in the group, we do a lot of interactive stuff, meaning I'll do live Facebook shows. I actually include the people within the group for, topic discussions and things of that nature. So definitely jump in there. And I'm also going to be releasing some merchandise, so you get some discounts if you're in the group as well. So Minds Like Minds Podcast. Appreciate you allowing me to spew all that fun stuff out.
Dude, I'm appreciative of you taking time to be on the podcast, man, because it was awesome talking to you. And I want to let everyone know we're going to link up his descriptions and everything so everybody can click on your stuff. And also, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank, and stay tuned for our next episode.